Okay, so we were going to start at 1:15. It's 1:26. But we're going to need to move forward anyway. Um, at the chair's briefing at the end of the day yesterday, it was requested that we spend more time talking about the framework as part of our next steps, especially around being able to have more of a clear set of deliverables when we walk out today on what people are working through. The challenge is going to be that we can't get that done in the short period of time that we had scheduled, which was from 1:15 to 1:45, and we definitely can't get that done from 1:27 to 1:45. But one thing that was also requested was that we do not limit this to picking this up at the next plenary, that we can't afford that. And I think we all agree with that. So what we'll probably have notice on very soon would be a virtual plenary to continue this discussion in a broader sense. It probably makes sense to me to have a couple of management council meetings and chairs meetings before that. So that would push us out about a month at least, because I think we need to get our arms around all of this. And that'll also give us time to have the feedback from the value proposition exercise as well, to ensure that we have all those things aligned. Is there anything specific that Andrew or Peter you would want to bring up as well around this?
No, I mean we'll respond to questions as they as folks ask them. Mm-hmm. But it's as was discussed and pointed out. We're going to get a detailed activity plan together to allow actual status tracking and reporting against it.
No, the only thing I would add, as I was sort of saying as an aside before we started the session, is the one thing that I sort of picked up very strongly from the plenary this week is not only the momentum in terms of interest, but also willingness to develop deliverables that actually do take the game forward. But this sort of sense, without overdoing any metaphors, but sort of this momentum of work building up, and a sense that there's a sort of wall of whether it's procedural complexity, organizational inertia, or a combination of things that people just want to see disappear, so that momentum can really start moving us forward. So the commitment I make as chair of the management council of the board is to ensure that, as Kim was saying, that over the summer we have a sort of intense series of meetings that are able to start preparing, as we've promised to do, a package of both, whether it's organizational, internal reforms, or areas where we think that the management council ought to be contributing to in terms of completing the first step of the identity system framework. It was a bit of an offhand comment yesterday afternoon, but thinking about it, I think there's some more substance to it about complementing the more technical and policy work that's been done and being advanced in the committees with that. Then I think that is a management council responsibility to at least get it going, complementing it with that sort of messaging, translating all the work that's been done over the months and in the plenary this week on the value proposition, coming up with a more public-facing deliverable, which is something that you can actually take to organisations, to boardrooms and others, and say, here is why this is important and what you can do to build towards it. So I think there's a number of things that we need to do both at that level as well, and I'm looking to how we can do that. I'm looking to try and host and this is new for everyone here, including all my fellow management council members, but be careful what you ask for. There's several requests to have another face-to-face sort of board type retreat, and I'm looking to try and host something in my part of the world, or at least the part of the world I live at the moment, in Los Angeles, in August, to have a 2-day or 3-day intensive board meeting where we can actually really sort of work in detail on the follow-up from our previous retreat, take on board the discussions and materials going here so that we can actually start moving that forward on our side as well to present to plenary in September.
So you're saying we're all going over to your house to do some planning?
Yep, and we'll get the barbecue out.
Oh, I was going to say barbecue.
Yeah. Careful what you wish for, dry cooking. Well, okay, won't go there.
This slide was one that caused some discussions yesterday, so I just wanted to pull that back up. And that was the high-level plan that had generic dates, just year dates. I still think that this serves as an effective skeleton timeline. And then there was one, if I can find it. Sorry for taking too long to get to the right slide. This one that caused even more discussion because it had months associated with it. So something by August, something by October. I think together in the next month, we can all work towards getting dates that are agreed upon. Probably more important than the dates would be the deliverables that are agreed upon and the actual tasks that are listed. I do think that the type of task that we had listed in the last presentation we gave more details around the task after the April plenary, and it was the email of this document that was kind of sent out to everyone, and there was feedback on some of the different tasks within the document, and we haven't lost any of those comments, but I would like to see us work towards being able to say, okay, I agree that in order to have a compliance conformance program, these are the agreed upon tasks and these are the agreed upon committees that are going to be executing these tasks. I do not think it has any real impact on the work that you've already done. Some of the comments that we received back was, does this mean that all the stuff that we've done already is worthless? And the answer is absolutely not. The goal would be to leverage the work that you've done to fit in within the tasks that are listed in this document. There's no reason why the important work that you've done cannot be leveraged. One of the other comments, when you see like a slide like this one, you saw a number of committees that were listed, and a concern was you can't have everybody leading. You have to pick, one committee has to be the lead committee. I agree with you. So the goal to me would be to fill that in. Who is the lead for the functional model? That one's pretty easy, right? That's the security committee. But I don't know if the answers will be true for every one of the other committees. And rather than make that assumption, I'd like to have your input on that. Anything else that I'd like to open the floor to just get your feedback, comments, concerns, frustrations, anything in that area.
So Kim, I guess what's the forum that we'll use to develop the material, stitch together all the committee work that's going? So one thing I forgot to mention yesterday was that my presentation following the committee report outs would have been better timing if there was more time, but the committees reported out on what they did for the last 3 months, but that is actually the content of the framework.
That's right.
It's just that it isn't, the crosswalk hasn't been done, the stitching together hasn't been done.
That's right.
So the framework is not a new thing. It's how does everything connect more.
That's right.
So what additional question, again, this is, there's no master plan behind this, it's just off the top of my head, and if the management council / board is to have a sort of 3-day retreat where you really get into the guts of stuff, would it make sense, and this is a question as much to the chairs of committees and anybody else, that the chairs of committees also be involved in that process, that would actually be an opportunity also precisely to help work doing the crosswalk. It just crossed my mind that that's a constituency that we had reasons to want to have just a board retreat last time and to work intensely together, and there was a sense that we worked up to a lot of stuff and then it was a bit premature at the ending. There was everyone felt we could have done with another day, another 2 days. If we're going to do this again and build that momentum up, maybe it's a good idea to have the committee chairs involved in that as well. So we don't know how many committee chairs we have in the room or online, but I don't want to sign you up, commit you to something which you're not able to commit to. But I just put that out there as an idea we should think about in the next few days.
So,
So to answer your question, and it's kind of related to Peter as well, I think that the forum is going to be the committee chair meetings where we have those conversations. That gives the committees a chance to talk amongst themselves, and then the committee chairs a chance to bring that information back. And we really dedicate our time together towards that. It'd be great, sometimes you can get a lot more accomplished in person, but that's a huge commitment to people to have to travel, a lot, especially in the next 2 months. And I want to make sure that the attendance at the September plenary is as high as possible. And I want to make a comment about that as well. We are in a huge room. We're in a room that accommodates 900 people. And there have been times that we have had in the room close to 200 people, and it may not feel like it. Just want you to know that our attendance at this plenary number 9 is actually the highest that it's been all year. So I just wanted to make sure that comment was made. We've never been in a room so large, and it swallows us. And so I just wanted to make sure that people didn't feel like, the empty feeling is reflective of the actual attendance. Our attendance is up at this plenary. I want it to be up even higher in Tampa. So I don't want anything to come.
And I think just to complement what you said, I mean, the issue of face-to-face or chairs calls, I don't think it's one or the other. I think we've got to find the right mix that helps drive all this work forward, and those regular calls are essential to that as well.
That may also mean that we have the length of the chairs calls longer too, to actually, have the roll up the sleeves conversations that are needed. But I mean, I think that that's the right forum for it. Does anybody have any? Okay, you're not a quiet group. I know we're tired, and we made it through 3 days. But does anybody have any comments, feedback, concerns? No? You did yesterday. Please?
I'll have one comment.
Okay, hold on. Let's go.
It's not on?
It's on now.
I'd like to add one comment. I would have liked more time and more presentation time from the pilots. I thought that was very interesting. I would have liked to have had a little bit more granularity. I thought it was a little too high level. That would have been my 2 cents. I would have liked to have heard a lot more from them.
From the pilots?
From the pilots, yes.
One thing that we definitely see, thank you for that comment, is use cases. And the pilots serve as excellent examples of use cases. So we had a great conversation with Kathy Tilton after the first presentation around the framework, because she wanted to have a conversation about how can use cases, where do use cases fit into this framework. And so the same thing applies to the pilots. The pilots are real-life examples of things that are going on. And so we'll definitely continue to talk to the NPO to help us in ensuring that there is time for the pilots to really talk in detail about the activities. I know that we made some references about the fidelity example that was given, and how even having that type of sharing with us was really helpful to see that some people are very removed from the work that we're doing, and to make sure that it's clear to be able to get them to adopt a process that can help us with the ecosystem. So yes, we'll definitely figure out how to add more around the pilots, and even more around use cases specifically, and ensure that that's been tied into the framework.
Can you go back a slide or two where you had those bullet points? Where it showed I think it was the first slide. No.
This one?
Yeah, that one. No, the next one.
It's coming, I'm sorry.
No, I think you passed it.
It's backwards, it's right there.
Right. Okay. So that first sub bullet point there, I think it would be sort of ideal, since half of the year is over anyway, and I guess that's at least 6 months to come up with this initial framework, is that it seems like at this time of the year, we should at least be ready, or people should somehow know enough to at least suggest what we think should be some recommendations, policies, or practices, or guidances at this point. It looks like from that bullet point, before we can even do that, we first have to develop a process that's going to evaluate these things. And that we're not going to get any of these requirements or recommendations unless we first have a process in place to develop and evaluate them. I just wondered, people have been working on this stuff for a while now. It seems like we should be ready to at least give our thoughts as to what do we think should be some recommendations, policies, practices, and guidances for this stuff. Right. And then put them all on the table and see if it makes sense, and then maybe step back and try to evaluate them instead of trying to come up with a process first that's going to create all this stuff.
In the committees, and most of the committees, and all the committees are relevant to that bullet, the work is underway. This slide doesn't represent the actual state of work. So, for example, the standards, the approach to the compliance program is well underway. Functional model is well underway. It's just not representative. It was a badly worded slide, I guess. So the selection processes are happening in the committees. Privacy evaluation methodology exists, and it's being used.
The standards adoption process underway. So I think that what's important to understand there is that regardless of the wording, thank you for even trying to put together a slide on that, is that there are going to be some things that work in parallel. And again, we're going to leverage the things that we're already working on. The key is, and someone brought that up yesterday, how can we show all of these different readouts from the committees, how are they connected to each other? And we need to make sure that this framework allows for that, and more importantly, that someone who is trying to leverage the outputs of the IDSG has something that they can work towards, and that's what the framework is ultimately trying to do, to allow for that whole self-attestation process where you can have eventually in a later state an actual certification process and other things. So all these should be driving towards the process of being able to be certified in a manner and even support the idea of a trust mark at some point as well, if that's what the end state truly is. Other comments?
I've got one.
Okay.
So in the after the sessions yesterday, I had some conversations with some folks, and they were relatively new to the plenary, sort of first time meetings, second time meetings, and what struck me from the gist of the comment was, it's surprising that we're still talking about this now, 2 years later. Where's the project plan? Where's the product plan? And what struck me is that we're doing a lot of talking to ourselves and not a lot of talking outwards. So with the shift in the plenary structure, with the inform and engage model, we're edging in the right direction. But it struck me very clearly that for newcomers to the group, we're just talking inwards. So our messaging to ourselves about where we're at is very different from the messaging that is to the outside world.
I would agree.
The amount of progress and what can be leveraged.
Yep.
And we just don't focus enough on that outside message.
So kind of gloss over that. One of the things that as we tried to develop the model for how we want the plenaries to kind of work, the in-person, face-to-face meetings, we said that our theme each time is going to be inform and engage. And then we're going to build from that. And so we talked a little bit at the beginning about the 5 or 6, actually at the beginning of the agenda as well, there's 6 core goals that we have. And so we want to ensure that we always address those. Thank you.
I wanted to say, I thought that the exercise where we did it in small groups worked very well. And I think that as we think about the plenaries, more active discussion among plenary participants is probably going to be a better thing to try to be emphasizing more of. I was also thinking about the structure, you know, just as, and I know we're all going to give feedback on the evaluations.
Which
I'm
is
sure-
new as well, so we're so
Yes.
glad that we actually have something like that.
And so I encourage everyone to give feedback in your evaluation. I think that if we think of Tuesday afternoon, we probably would have been better served to have more time with that panel of outside stakeholders potentially, and hearing what would have interested them in what the IDSG would do, and less time in sort of the status updates of the organization. We have to find a way where we can be communicating the status updates electronically a little bit better. I know that's a big part of the plenary, is to have that, but just as we begin to think about the opportunity, I think wherever we go, reaching out to underserved and dubious communities and hearing about their needs would be a great activity for the plenary, because it'll begin to inform the products that we ultimately create.
Agree.
We have a question from outside.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to follow up on Jack's comment, because I think there's a related element which we've also discussed, which is about the organizational and logistic issues about plenaries. And I think instead of seeing the in-person and the online components as a problem, we should actually be leveraging those different aspects as a facility, so that we actually organize our business in such a way that when we're in person, we're doing things that are best done in person, which is normally raising new ideas, socializing ideas, resolving major disagreements about fundamental issues of where we're going. Those are things which are actually done very efficiently in face-to-face meetings. Whereas, as Jack's saying, there are online, if you have an online-only meeting, there are things that you can do much more efficiently without having to mobilize people to be here face-to-face. And I think one of the challenges we need to look at is, in terms, and this is taking on some of the stuff that Khalil's been talking about, you know, new forms of engagement, is how we can maybe, in a situation where we need to think about costs in the future as well, how we can maximize the use of plenary in person, have separate plenaries online, maybe looking to reduce the time when we actually have to have them both simultaneously, because that is an incredibly, you know, it's an important additional burden. But thirdly, to inject a new element, which is, I think, the issue of, related to the issue of outreach, and that is, you know, each of the 14 delegates on the management council are elected directly from stakeholder categories, about how we can look to use those, a bit like Jim Barnett did with the Consumer Advocacy Group on Tuesday afternoon, to look at forums, whether it's in the plenary or elsewhere, for having active engagement of where the stakeholder delegate is the key to sort of driving that, to looking towards their stakeholders in their group, to actually taking the message out, bringing new people in, being able to articulate what we're talking about, and getting feedback from the people who are going to be affected as well. So I think there are, you know, online, in-person, and more distinct sort of stakeholder-oriented category type of forums or engagement are all important in that.
Just as a follow-up, I will say that as a stakeholder delegate, I think that we have not done enough to really figure out how we are supposed to be engaging our stakeholder communities, gaining input, and that would be a major plus. The last comment I will make is other organizations that I belong to, we have a very different virtual plenary than we have from the face-to-face. What's somewhat constraining is trying to do the same plenary for both makes it limiting as to what you can do in some sense, and we may need to be, as a group, talking about how do we create the best experience for both parties that would be there.
And that's exactly what we're looking at. you'll see that one of those bullets, kind of to your earlier point that we had, was incorporate external views from outside the IDSG. We're going to work very hard at ensuring that in each of the times that we get to meet together, that we're not just talking to each other, being insular in our approach, but truly hearing from those that have not been at the table to help us in making our output more meaningful. Online?
Okay, Sudi's going to read the question.
Thank you.
So the question is
Hold on, I can't hear.
from Andrew K. Rollins. Will the value proposition be proposed to the plenary for a vote?
Well, I'm not 100% sure without talking in more detail about it actually being a vote, but it definitely will be socialized within the plenary. So as we get, so right now, just to let you know the efforts that are going on, all those individual documents that or pieces of paper that everybody put together and shared their comments are being transcribed. That information is going to be synthesized, and then the output's going to go back out and let everybody see what's going on with that. And ultimately, the goal is to ensure that the broader value proposition reflects all of the smaller value propositions that we have in common. And so I'm not sure exactly if the formal structure, if there's a vote there, but there will be a socialization process there that we all are, the goal is to make sure that we're all aligned and that that it reflects everything.
Yeah, I think the only additional thought I have on that is that it's not a sort of unitary or binary thing of just that there's one thing that has to be delivered to plenary for a up-down vote.
Right.
It's actually a very granular thing. There are aspects of the, what we're trying to do is, as you say, build the socialization. Is this broadly and in the details the sort of value proposition that we can buy into as an organization? It is then a matter of translating that and articulating that through various channels, whether that's through media, through Jim Barnett's talked about this before, sort of idea of speakers bureau, whether that's something which goes out under the authority of a management council, under the plenary of a particular committee, an individual stakeholder. All of those, I would say yes to all of those. I don't think it's just one single thing which has to be squeezed through this very, very complex plenary adoption process. But, at some point we need to have that buy-in, that's clear.
Hey, Stuart.
Stuart Shapiro. I just wanted to go back to what Peter was saying about, well, we want to appropriately leverage different forms of meetings. So we want to, leverage virtual meetings in ways which, align with the advantages of virtual, and we want to leverage physical meetings in ways that align with the advantages of all being physically together. So with respect to physical meetings, I can say that I have had a number of extremely substantive and useful conversations with people here with respect to IDSG activities, as opposed to other business opportunities or what have you. And almost all of those conversations took place in the hallway. Okay, I think
That's where everyone is.
I think
That's where he was? Oh, okay.
No, that's where everyone else is.
I'm not going to ask what was. I think there's a natural tendency to want to pack in programming. We're all here together. We all travel. We don't want anybody to feel that their time is being wasted. And so I think there's always this tendency to over-program these kinds of events. And I would just urge in future that we allow for longer breaks, to allow those hallway conversations to take place. Yes, I know we have the social hours, but at least my experience is, at the social functions, people tend to be, social. Okay? People tend to talk about things other than business, other than IDSG business.
Or they don't remember it in the morning. Yeah.
Pardon?
Or they don't remember the business conversation.
Well, that may be too. I've had this experience with other conferences and in other contexts. and and I go to conferences where they make a specific point of allowing for long breaks in order to enable those important hallway conversations to take place. And so, with respect to getting the most out of physical meetings per se, that would be one suggestion for me is please give us longer breaks so that we can have those hallway conversations without feeling rushed, without feeling like we're wondering what we're missing in here because we don't want to break off the discussion that got started during the 15-minute break.
Yes, no, I agree. And in fact, I have, and I don't know if it's the Southern girl in me coming out or what, but I also think there should not be a break without something for me to snack on in there as well. And so I'm going to make sure, so we're going to figure out from a budgetary standpoint and from a facility standpoint, whenever we have our meetings, that we do have time for people to have those break hallway conversations with a cup of tea, maybe sweet tea, or coffee, or whatever you may need, and maybe a snack too. Because I think that those things do facilitate the ability to have those conversations. And we think one of the challenges we do have is that when we have invited speakers, sometimes we have very specific timelines that we have to have things happen, and that reduces our flexibility, but recognizing the need for informal times to have important conversations is important. Thank you.
Have informal times and don't over-engineer it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Anything else? We are actually almost at the end of the plenary.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing comments?
No, I think this has been very useful. I've been taking notes as we go along, and what I wanted to say in closing comments has actually come out in the discussion. So that's very good.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for really being very engaged as always through the process. I think that we've made some significant progress towards being even further on the path of where we want to be as an organization. I think that we've had a chance to show who we are and what we've been doing to individuals that maybe have not been involved in the past, and hope that they do stay involved. And I think we also have seen some gaps that we have as an organization, and we'll work very hard towards trying to fill those. So this is actually the end of the plenary. What I don't want to have you forget is that there is an attribute assurance workshop or roundtable that's going to be next for those of you that are interested. It should be very interesting as well. And other than that, I hope you all travel safely back home for those of you who are just driving down the street or taking a flight. And thank you very much.
Great.